Hey guys, tonight we journey somewhere cold, smoky, and surprisingly minty. You are no longer wrapped in blankets or lying beneath your ceiling fan. You're nestled instead in a wool-lined longhouse, deep in the fjords, in a world of creaking, beams, tangy goat milk, and people who believe brushing your teeth with a goose feather is just part of morning routine. Outside, the wind claws across the dark sea. Inside, your bed is a pile of flattened straw and pelts. Your tongue is coated in last night's dried fish and barley mash. Somewhere nearby, someone is already up, spitting into the fire pit and making bear noises that might be yawns. And you, brave Viking soul that you are, have morning breath fit to wither a spruce. No one told you that Viking hygiene was this vivid. Sure, you expected raids and axe throwing, but no one prepared you for the delicate art of feather flossing or how much time you'd spend boiling bone chips into dental paste. Toothcare isn't optional here. Vikings, yes, those beardy, battle-hardened raiders, were picky about their smiles. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'm trying to bring you to strange places in history, one snore-worthy bedtime at a time. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing who's brushing their teeth in Mongolia or falling asleep in Milwaukee. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake with frost on your eyelashes. You slept with your cloak over your face again. Smells like you, which is not great. You blink. Beside you, your goose feather lies where you left it, wrapped in a strip of waxed hide, slightly bent, with the tip stiff from yesterday's soot and fat paste. You stretch. Your joints snap like twigs in a fire. A dog snores near the door. Someone's frying barley gruel with what you pray is onion. Toothcare comes before breakfast. Always. You slide out of your bedding and stumble to the hearth. Fire's still warm. You fish your pouch from beneath a fur tunic. It's goat leather, soft and dark, tied shut with red sinew string. Inside, a charred pine twig, a scrap of rough cloth, a lump of dried paste that smells like campfire and regret, and of course, the feather. No one knows exactly when Vikings began fussing about their teeth, but archaeologists have found enough. Toothpicks, combs, and personal grooming kits and graves to confirm. These folks did not enjoy gingivitis. Nor, for that matter, did they want green teeth in the afterlife. You wet the feather in warm water, just a little, enough to soften the shaft. Then you scoop some of the paste, burnt bone powder mixed with animal fat, sometimes with ash or resin, and begin. Tiny strokes. Inside, outside. Scrape, scrape. The feather works, better than expected. It slips between your teeth like a narrow brush. You turn it slightly to scrape off a chunk of yesterday's goat cartilage. Delightful. Historians still argue whether Vikings brushed daily or just before feasts or battles. You do it twice a day, out of both discipline and fear of smelling. Like the dead boar head nailed to the door outside, a goose feather isn't your only tool. You also chew on birch twigs sometimes, if you're out traveling. They fray nicely and even have natural antiseptic properties. Not that you know what antiseptic means, but you know chewing birch stings a bit and makes your gums feel clean. You trust your mouth instincts. You hum a little raiding song while you scrub. The tune's older than your grandfather. It's about a man who fought 3 Scots, lost 1 tooth, and wooed his cousin anyway. Classics. Your tongue runs over your teeth. Smooth. Smoother than last week when you forgot for 2 days and got a nice black smear near your right molar. You'd rather die in battle than rot from within. You spit into the fire. It sizzles. Next comes mouth rinse. Your pouch holds a pinch of salt and dried mint leaf. You toss both in warm water and slosh it around. Not delicious, but oddly refreshing. Better than swamp water, better than boiled turnip juice, which someone tried once. You look up. The sky beyond the smoke hole is pale gray. You're alive. You're minty. You might die later in a skirmish or from a moldy barley cake, but for now your teeth are brushed and your breath only mildly hostile. It's a good start. Outside, the longhouse is coming to life. Dogs bark. A child yells. Somewhere, someone is already chopping frozen wood like it owes them money. You tuck the feather back into its pouch, careful not to bend it too much. A good feather lasts about a week, maybe longer if you don't chew on it during daydreams. You rub your fingers together, rough, warm. The skin under your nails is black from smoke and resin. You look around. No one else is brushing yet. Typical. You feel proud. Clean teeth are your private rebellion. Historians have found feather quills and pick-shaped tools in Viking settlements, especially among wealthier burials. Goose feathers were common, plentiful, soft, flexible. Not all birds make great toothbrushes. A raven's quill is too stiff. A duck's too floppy. But a goose? Just right. And if you're wondering, yes, your friend once tried a porcupine quill. Let's just say his gums bled for 2 days, and he never smiled at his crush again. You stretch again. Fire cracks. Today might bring fishing, or sheep shearing, or rowing drills, or news of a Saxon trader's caravan ripe for the picking. But your teeth? They're clean. You're ready. And tomorrow? You'll do it again. Maybe add a bit of clove next time. You found some at the last raid. Tasted weird, but fancy. Your hands are still warm from the fire as you pull on your boots. Still damp. Still refusing to soften. And trudge outside for the next ritual of your chilly Viking morning. Confronting the bitter air and whatever breakfast has not yet escaped. The pot. The cold hits you like a slap from Odin himself. Frost crunches beneath your feet. Smoke slinks up from nearby roofs, curling into the dull, pewter-colored sky. Somewhere, a raven caws like it knows your secrets. You duck into the outer cooking shelter. Inside, it's warm, barely. There's a stew pot over coals and a hunk of last night's bread stiff enough to qualify as a weapon. You tear off a piece anyway, chew it slowly, and feel the familiar sting of barley crust scraping against your molars. It's a pain you've grown fond of. But with food comes flavor, and flavor means danger, especially when your toothbrush is a feather and your toothpaste tastes like the bottom of a fire pit. So you reach again into your pouch and grab your soot paste. One more gentle scrub. The base is simple. Crushed animal bone, sifted charcoal, and a bit of ash from hardwoods. The fat that holds it together, rendered from goat mostly, sometimes boar. You've even heard of salmon fat being used, though that's more of a coastal luxury. You warm the paste between your fingers, pinch some onto your feather, and go to work again. This second brushing is lighter, more symbolic. A final touch-up after eating, before setting off, like washing your hands in public even if they were clean already. You just don't want to be the guy with stew breath in a shield wall, especially not when you're shouting death chants in close quarters. The taste is earthy, not entirely unpleasant, actually. You've gotten used to it. There's a certain pride in crafting your own hygiene blend from scratch. No scrolls, no branding, no influencers hawking minty foam. Just you, fire ash, and the bones of yesterday's dinner. Historians still argue whether Vikings had a true concept of morning routine as we know it today. Some claim grooming was mostly ceremonial, done for feasts or rites. Others insist that clean teeth and combed beards were daily habits for many, especially those of higher status. Archaeological digs have revealed combs, tweezers, even ear spoons in graves. Not your average dirtball savages, turns out. You finish the touch-up and spit near a post, watching the froth freeze slightly as it hits the cold earth. Nice. Next, you rub your gums. This isn't dental science. It's a gut feeling. A piece of birch bark wrapped around your finger, a few strokes along your gums, and you feel alive, present. You tell yourself it makes your gums stronger. It might. Or it might just make you feel in control when everything else, like weather, disease, and Saxon archers, is not. Around you, the camp is stirring. Someone has started sharpening a blade with loud, exaggerated scraping. Another soul is yelling about boots again. A child with one shoe runs past holding a frozen fish, the usual. You begin to pack your kit. Feather back in the pouch, cloth wrapped tight, resin ball sealed in a bit of gut-tied hide. You tuck the paste lump into a horn jar, with a cork nodding at your own efficiency. A proper Viking is prepared for anything, and that includes onion breath ambushes. To keep your breath fresh longer, you chew a few needles of pine. Not spruce. They're bitter and rude. Pine, though, gives a sharp, pleasant tingle and leaves your spit tasting vaguely like a ship's mast. You roll your shoulders. Your jaw clicks once. Fine. Teeth, ready. Breath, surprising. Dignity, intact, for now. As you sling your gear over your back, you remember the first time someone showed you how to mix soot paste. You were maybe 8, sitting by the forge, watching your uncle pound iron while chewing on a deer tendon. He spat a glob of black gunk into the fire, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small carved cup. "For your teeth," he said. "You don't want to face Thor with rot in your smile." He was wrong about a lot of things, like how to flirt with shield maidens or tie a proper knot, but he was right about that. Your friend Egil once skipped his paste for a week, claiming he was acclimating to Battlemouth. By day 4, his breath could knock down a sparrow mid-flight. By day 6, he was chewing birch twigs like his life depended on it. You never let him forget. You walk toward the edge of the village now, passing rows of huts and a few early risers combing there, beards in metal-shined bowls. Appearance matters here. Not in the modern selfie sense, but in the way a well-maintained smile implies order, health, and competence. Very useful qualities if you're trying not to get left behind when the raiding party forms. Even now, your teeth gleam faintly. Not blindingly, but enough that when you talk, people don't squint and back away. That's success. You take one last breath through your nose. Smoke, frost, salted meat, wool grease. The Viking scent palate. And you step into your day. Confident. Combed. Feathered. You pat the side of your pouch. The feather is still in there, snug and ready. You'll need it again after lunch, especially if today's stew involves onions or anything with a questionable crust. No one said being a Viking was easy. But at least your teeth won't be the reason you die. You're ankle deep in crunchy frost by now, trudging toward the training field with your pouch bouncing against your hip. Your hands are rough, your boots unforgiving, but your breath somehow tolerable. There's a faint whiff of mint and charcoal. You are, at this moment, probably one of the freshest-smelling Vikings on the peninsula. Not that anyone will thank you for it, but let's talk about that goose feather. Yes, the star of your routine. The humble, flexible, weirdly perfect dental tool you now rely on more than your axe. You didn't invent the technique. No, that honor probably goes to some goose-obsessed genius centuries ago, but you've certainly mastered it. A goose feather isn't just some fluffy afterthought. It's a finely tuned grooming instrument, chosen specifically for its structure. The quill is narrow and surprisingly strong, while the soft veins can slide gently between teeth and gums. Plucked carefully from under the wing, never the tail, never the flight feathers, and trimmed just so it becomes a kind of medieval floss pick hybrid. Light enough to carry, precise enough to clean, disposable enough that you don't cry when it eventually splits. You remember your first goose feather toothbrush. You were young, probably too eager. You over-trimmed the feather until it was barely a toothpick. You poked your gums so hard they bled for a week. You tried again. You watched the older ones use gentle strokes, careful angles. Eventually, you got it. Now, it's almost meditative. You sit by the fire, angle your head just right, and run the feather slowly between your teeth, flicking away yesterday's roast or charred bread crust. Goose feathers do not judge. They simply clean. Historians still argue whether goose feathers were used exclusively for dental hygiene, or if their dental use was simply one of many purposes. Some claim they doubled as ink pens or even tiny ear cleaners. Others suggest that each feather was single-use, replaced after one cleaning. You keep yours until it frays beyond help, then ceremoniously toss it into the fire, your tiny smoky offering to the gods of oral health. The feather has rivals, of course. Some folks prefer thin slivers of wood or sharpened fish bones. But those come with risks. You've seen a man lose half a molar to an overly enthusiastic birch sliver. And fish bones? Well, let's just say you'd rather not floss with something that still smells like cod. But goose feathers, they're safe, soft, simple, even poetic if you squint hard enough. After all, what other hygiene item can also be used to tickle your friend into a rage or write a goodbye note to your ex before a raid? You arrive at the training field and notice a few warriors already swinging practice swords, their breaths rising like steam. Your friend Ivar, huge, loud, perpetually red in the face, grins at you and shouts, "Teeth so clean you gonna kiss the enemy?" You nod solemnly and reply, "Only if he's got goose feathers too." You laugh. He doesn't. As you spar, dodging blows and nearly twisting an ankle in a patch of frozen mud, your pouch jiggles again. It's reassuring. A reminder that after you're done pretending to die honorably, you can sit by the fire and tend to your molars like a civilized raider. Later, after practice, you collapse by a stump and catch your breath. Your heart pounds, your arms ache, your mouth tastes like iron and pine sap. Not ideal. You reach into your pouch, pull out the feather, and start gently brushing the inside of your lower teeth. Not a full clean, just a touch-up, a reset, a round. You, others notice. Some scoff, some nod approvingly. One man, Harold the Loud, watches in envy. His breath has the aura of fermented cabbage and unwashed leather. You offer him a spare feather. He takes it like it's made of gold. Don't chew it, you warn. He does anyway. You shake your head and return to your task, twirling the feather like a master. It slides into places fingers can't reach. It hums against your gums like a lullaby for your enamel. You pause and notice something. A tiny black speck on your right canine. Burnt barley, a sliver of charred lamb. With surgeon-like focus, you flick it out. Success. There's something satisfying about it, something primal and proud. You survived another day, another sparring match, and your teeth are still mostly intact. Your ancestors would be thrilled. You think briefly about Valhalla. If the sagas are true, it's full of mead, meat, and endless fighting. But no one mentions what happens if you arrive with yellow teeth. Will Odin turn you away? Will Valkyries pretend not to see you? Is there a special hall for warriors who couldn't be bothered to brush? You shudder. The feather goes back in its pouch, clean, calm, ready. You look up at the twilight sky, turning that particular shade of Viking gray blue. The kind that says, "Evening stew soon, and more dental decay if you're not careful." But you're fine, feather-wielding, soot-pasted, and still somehow alive. The air thickens with the scent of pine smoke and boiled onions as the sun crawls lower, dragging pale gold light across the roofs. You make your way back to the longhouse, your boots crusted in mud and the sweet sting of a pulled shoulder from training trailing behind you like an old story. Your breath is still decent and your teeth are still smugly smooth. But now, it's time to face something more perilous than a duel or a longboat crossing. The communal stench of Viking mornings. You enter the longhouse and are immediately greeted by the warm embrace of goat hair, sweat, wet wool, and something. That might be pickled eel or expired cabbage. It's hard to say. You take shallow breaths and try not to look directly at the stew pot bubbling in the corner like it knows too much. Smells weren't optional in your world. Hygiene was a balance, a delicate waltz between freezing water, communal living, and wood smoke clinging to every hair follicle you possess. Your body might be resilient, your mind sharp, but your nose is always a little under siege. To survive, you and your kin developed a set of unspoken hygiene rituals, each designed to push back against the daily tide of odor. One of the most cherished, scented tooth rubs. Before lunch, you dig into your pouch and retrieve a scrap of wool dipped in pine sap and crushed juniper. You rub it along your gums, letting the sharp, resinous burn hit like a cleansing flame. A lesser man would weep. You smile or grimace. Close enough. Historians still argue whether Vikings scented their oral pastes or simply tolerated the natural bouquet of their ingredients. But enough finds, juniper sprigs near combs, beeswax near hearths, birch resin in burial goods, suggest that smell mattered, especially if you were wealthy or flirting. You lean back on a stool fashioned from a tree stump and inspect your surroundings. A group of elders is muttering over a game of anefatafel. Someone's sharpening fish hooks with a stone that looks suspiciously like it was borrowed from a neighbor's grave marker. And your cousin Fridas is trying to teach a goat not to eat her sandals. You take the moment to reach into your satchel and retrieve your linen napkin, not for meals, of course, but for wiping your tongue. You fold it over your index finger, scrape gently, and remove the mysterious fuzz that has taken up residence overnight. A clean tongue is half the battle, and you are not about to let fermented garlic stew undo your entire goose feather campaign. Across the room, someone lets out a belch that shakes the rafters. You consider lighting a pine cone just to even the scent profile. Your friend Leaf joins you, holding his own feather. Notched, bent, and clearly loved. Mint sprigs, he says, chewing, thoughtfully. Stolen from the trader's wife. Classy, you reply. He shrugs. Better than seaweed. You both laugh. There's an odd pride in discussing breath-freshening tactics among warriors. Not just for vanity, but for community harmony. You're all stuck in the same house, the same air. Clean mouths are a kindness, a rare mercy. Your grandmother once told you that a Viking's breath could tell you everything. What they ate, how healthy they were, how likely they were to die in their 30s. She was dramatic, but not wrong. You finish with the tongue cloth, rinse your mouth with warm water infused with a hint of wormwood, bitter but strangely clarifying, and tuck your gear away. It's not glamorous. There are no golden basins or ivory brushes, but it's yours, and it works. You watch a child across the room practice brushing with a tiny feather, giggling when she misses and pokes her own cheek. You nod approvingly. The legacy continues. The longhouse settles into quiet preparation. Wooden bowls are passed around. The stew is bearable tonight. Barley, onion, something possibly pork. You eat slowly, careful to keep your molars from being ambushed by bone shards. You sip mead with restraint, not because you're cautious, but because you know fermented honey clings to teeth like guilt, and you've already cleaned twice today. You overhear a man boast about once brushing with snow and fish spine after being stranded for 3 days. You don't correct him, but you make a mental note never to share a feather with him. After the meal, you duck outside for fresh air, or what counts as fresh when the wind smells like salted herring and damp leather. You walk a bit, watching as smoke rises from other homes, curling into the indigo sky like ghost stories. The smell is better out here. Earth, pine, cold. You breathe it in and remember why you go through the trouble. Clean teeth aren't about vanity. They're about survival. Confidence, even intimacy. You once saw two lovers pass a single goose feather between them after brushing. Romantic? A little. Slightly gross? Also, yes. But the point stands. Oral hygiene has always been a gesture of care, for self and others. You check your pouch again. Everything's in place. The feather is still usable. The paste still pliable. Your tongue feels smooth. Your breath doesn't singe bark. You've won this round. And tomorrow, you'll do it again, one scrape at a time. Evening settles over the village with a hush as the last rays of sun slip behind the snowy ridges, and the long house is lit only by the soft flicker of oil lamps and the low, comforting glow of the hearth. The day has slowed. The axe training is done. The stew has thickened and vanished. Now it's time for stories, idle whittling, and for some, the quiet rituals of oral superstition. You're sitting near the hearth again, feather pouch in your lap, lazily stroking the handle of your eating knife, not for combat, not even for food. Just the simple, idle comfort of familiar tools. Beside you, Leaf fiddles with a leather charm shaped like a molar. And across the room, your Uncle Torgrim, who claims to have wrestled a lynx and lost most of his front teeth in the process, is telling a tale. It's about a man who carried a wolf's tooth around his neck, said it kept his own teeth strong, said it kept bad breath away, too. You raise an eyebrow, but Torgrim insists. You can smell a coward through the gums, he says, nodding sagely. Your grandmother once said similar. She believed in sage leaves for wisdom, birch ash for clarity, and if you really needed courage, you rubbed the bark of an ironwood tree on your molars and whispered a chant in Old Norse that sounded like a goat sneezing. Historians still argue whether such charms had true ritual significance or were simply folk remedies passed along with the same confidence as a recipe for goat stew. But there's no doubt that toothcare and superstition were tightly woven together. Vikings didn't just fear decay, they feared what it meant. Weak teeth were signs of age, illness, or dishonor. So yes, you keep a charm in your pouch. Yours is a tiny sliver of walrus tusk, carved into a knot pattern, worn smooth from years of thumbing it after every battle. You don't fully believe in its magic, but you've never had a tooth fall out unexpectedly. So, across the hall, a woman braids her daughter's hair while chanting softly. You catch fragments of words, something about Freya, something about the light of smiles. Probably a prayer for strong teeth, or maybe just for pleasant breath on wedding nights. Leif pulls a sprig of thyme from his pouch and chews it. He offers you one. You accept. It's sharp, herbal, a little bitter, but refreshing. You rub your tongue along your teeth. Still clean, still bright. You consider the feather again, but you've already brushed twice. Instead, you take out the cloth and run it across your lips, wiping away stew remnants and tiny crumbs. Not because you're expecting a kiss, just because it's a comfort. Somewhere behind you, someone begins humming a lullaby, the kind meant to soothe babies and warriors alike. The tune weaves through the wood smoke like a soft ribbon, and for a moment, everything feels slower, softer. The pouch in your lap is more than a dental kit. It's a survival kit, a ritual pouch, a pocket-sized testament to your belief that even in a world of blood and frost, small things matter. Like clean gums, like charms, like brushing before bed. You glance to the rafters, where charms hang from strings, wooden circles carved with symbols, bones etched with teeth-like marks, feathers stained with ash. Some say they're for good dreams. Others say they protect you from tooth rot while you sleep. You don't question it. You've seen people bury their dental charms with their dead, especially warriors. A polished incisor strung on sinew, a goat tooth etched with runes, a small brush wrapped in linen. The afterlife is long after all. Best arrive minty. Leaf shows you his newest charm, a bronze pendant in the shape of an open mouth. It's both crude and strangely elegant. He swears it keeps his molars aligned. You refrain from mentioning his slight overbite. There's a strange comfort in this culture of teeth. In a world where so much is uncertain, weather, wars, who's hogging the good mead, there's consistency in the rituals. You brush, you chew, you rinse, you charm. It's a cycle, and it helps. Somewhere near the fire, a child is handed their first feather. They look confused. They try to brush with the wrong end. Laughter erupts. You remember your first try, too. You feel old, but also oddly proud. You lean back against the timber wall, feeling the day settle into your bones. Your pouch rests against your hip. Your teeth are smooth. Your breath acceptable, and you're tired. You watch the flames dance. You think of ancestors, of warriors who carved tooth symbols into their swords for luck, of women who wore molar, charms for fertility, of quiet nights like this, where someone else in some other longhouse did exactly what you're doing now, sitting near a fire, pouch in hand, listening to stories that make the darkness a little less cold. And maybe, just maybe, they also wondered why goose feathers worked so well, why birch bark soot felt cleaner than river water, why mint leaves whispered of something sacred. You smile, careful not to show too many teeth, modesty, even in dental pride. You settle in, wrapping a wool cloak around your shoulders. Tomorrow brings more chewing, more brushing, maybe a new feather if this one wears down. But for now, you rest. You are clean. You are whole. You are weirdly invested in historical dental rituals. Good night, Tooth Warrior. The fire pops, a log collapses, and the embers send up a quiet spray of sparks as you wake sometime later, just briefly, to the warm weight of the longhouse and the muffled chorus of snores. It's the middle of the night, but your bladder and your curiosity won't let you sleep. You reach for your feather pouch again, not to brush, but to examine its contents under the flickering lamplight. Tonight, we take inventory. You kneel by the hearth with the pouch open across your lap, like it's a treasure hoard, and in some strange Viking way, it is. Each item speaks to survival, tradition, and that uniquely Norse blend of stubbornness and ingenuity. It's not glamorous, but neither is your world. And yet somehow, it works. Let's see what's inside. First, the goose feather, obviously. Still intact, tip slightly darkened from repeated soot paste applications. The shaft is smooth, cleaned daily. You trim the end once a week to keep the edge firm, but not too sharp. You run a fingertip along its length. It's lasted you a fortnight, already. Solid craftsmanship. Next, you pull out the leather vial of toothpaste. The mixture inside is dry now, but still potent. You pinch a bit onto your finger and sniff. The sharp tang of salt, the bitter edge of burnt bone, and faintly, the oil of crushed resin. You added that last one yourself. Gives it a woodsy freshness. Maybe even a little intimidating. Beside, a small cloth bundle of additions and flavor agents. That's what you call them, even if most are barely palatable. Crushed chalk, dried mint leaves, flakes of deer antler, believed to strengthen enamel, though some scholars think that's a holdover from old fertility beliefs, and a pinch of blue woad powder, not for hygiene, but for flair. Occasionally, you like to leave a faint hue on your lower canines. Makes you look spirit-touched, according to Leif. You unfold the second flap of the pouch and reveal your scraping tools. A toothpick made from pine, carved to a needlepoint. A thin fishbone, cleaned and sanded down to use in emergencies. You try to avoid it. The trauma of last spring's gum stab still lingers. A tiny comb, intended for beard, use, but occasionally employed to clear larger debris from your molars. Necessity, as they say, makes us all hygienists. Then there's the linen cloth. Coarse but clean, used to polish teeth or wipe down the feather after use. You wash it in a stream once a week, rub it with soapwort, and air dry it on the back of your shield. Because who says you can't multitask? Lastly, tucked in the corner is a small dried berry. It's not for brushing. It's for emergency breath rescue. You've never needed it. But knowing it's there makes you feel dangerously prepared. Like you could get summoned before a king and still not offend his nose. Historians still debate how accurate these contents are, largely because few complete dental kits have survived. We find fragments, feathers, bones, traces of ash in pouches buried with the dead, but the full scope is stitched together by patterns, educated guesses, and experimental archaeology. Still, the consistency is striking. Viking toothcare wasn't improvisational, it was precise. You remember once hearing about a burial where the remains were buried with a full grooming set: comb, tweezer, toothpick, and tiny pots that still smelled faintly of resin when opened. The archaeologist who found it cried. Not because it was rare, though it was, but because it was intimate, personal, and that's what your pouch feels like. A small universe in a leather shell. You could go anywhere with this. Raid a monastery, climb a hill, woo a blacksmith, all with the confidence of someone who knows their bicuspids are presentable. You begin repacking it slowly. Each item has its place. You whisper to yourself, mostly out of habit, a little chant you heard from an old woman once. Ash for strength, bone for truth, feather for the path unseen. You don't think it's magic, but you don't not think it either. The toothbrush feather slides back into its wrap. The resin paste goes into the corner pouch. The bone pick? You tuck it in with more reverence than necessary. As you fold the flap shut and tie it with sinew, you hear a rustle outside, a soft hoof. Your horse, probably dreaming of apples again. You move to the doorway and peer out. The snow crunches underfoot. The air smells like pine and ice and distant mead. You take a breath and smile. You could sleep now, or brush again. You almost laugh at yourself. But then you pull out the mint leaf you didn't use earlier. Just one. You chew it slowly, savoring the sting, and then spit into the fire pit, where it sizzles with a tiny hiss like it approves. You wrap your cloak tighter and crawl back onto your bedding. Everything is clean, everything is ready, and if tomorrow you find a stray crumb, a rogue fish scale, or the cloying scent of onion stew in your molars, you'll handle it, one feather at a time. The morning fog is thick, curling low over the village like it's trying to sneak back under the covers. You, on the other hand, are already up, stretching your arms and jaw and muttering something unkind to the cold. Your teeth feel sensitive today. Not terribly so, but enough that you eye your goose feather with a bit more caution than usual. You've brushed already, yes, but now your gums are sending tiny little complaint signals. Not bleeding exactly, but raw. You run your tongue along the inside of your lower teeth and wince slightly. Too much pressure last night? Too much barley crust? Or maybe it's just one of those Viking days where your molars feel like they've been chewed on by a squirrel in revenge. You sit near the fire pit, feather in hand, and consider your options. That's when you remember the tar. You reach into the side of your pouch and pull out the small chunk of birch tar wrapped in goat bladder. You peel it open and the scent hits immediately. Sharp, earthy, slightly sweet. Like a tree had an opinion and decided to express it with perfume and vinegar. Birch tar has been your fallback for years. You first tried it on a dare. Your cousin smeared it on his gums, swore it fixed everything from a sore tooth to heartbreak. You watched him grimace, drool, and then, after a few minutes, smile like he'd just invented healing. So now, you use it. Carefully. You break off a pea-sized lump and warm it between your fingers. It softens quickly, goes a little tacky. Then, you press it to the affected area near your aching molar. Not deep inside, just resting along the gum line like an herbal poultice with attitude. The sting is immediate. It doesn't burn exactly, but it doesn't feel polite either. You sit, eyes watering, trying not to swear in front of a passing goat. The sensation fades into a numbness, a pressure, then nothing at all. Blessed relief. Historians still argue whether birch tar was used medicinally or just as glue for repairing. Cracked boats, hafting weapons, and terrifying children. But evidence from bog bodies and burned remnants in tools suggests it had antiseptic properties. Vikings knew how to extract it from the bark, slowly heating it in pits until it oozed like molasses, and they didn't waste anything. You chew slowly. Now, testing. The ache has dulled. You poke the area with your tongue. Risky behavior, but irresistible. Still tender, but manageable. You lean back and look at the tar pouch. It smells like forest secrets. You respect it. You also fear it, just a little. To complement the treatment, you rub your gums again with a bit of wool cloth soaked in salt water and thyme. You've heard it helps tighten the gums and discourage mouth ghosts, a term someone once used for bad breath demons, which may or may not have been invented during a mead-heavy evening. The entire ritual feels excessive to someone who isn't you. But you know the risks. You've seen men lose teeth to infections, walk around with gaping smiles and breath so foul it can peel bark. You'd rather face a berserker than tooth rot without birch tar. Across the longhouse, your friend Ingrid joins you, cradling her own feather and a pouch of dried berries. She sees the tar pouch and nods in solidarity. Left molar? She asks. Right. Incisor, you reply. Too much barley? Too much bragging, you admit. She smirks. She's one of the few women in the village known for carrying her own blend of clove oil, dried mint, and vinegar-soaked cloth. When someone gets a toothache, they go to Ingrid before they go to the healer. Her methods are aggressive but effective. She once swabbed a man's mouth with eel skin dipped in vinegar, and he claimed he could taste colors for a week. You respect her. You also never borrow from her pouch unless supervised. Today, she offers you a tiny twist of twine soaked in clove. For later, she says, when the tar wears off. You accept gratefully. The day passes in chores, wood chopping, weaving repairs, oiling weapons, but the tar's dull grip on your gum lingers comfortingly. You check your feather midday, run a cloth over it, and replace it neatly. No brushing. Now. Not until tomorrow. A tooth in pain is a tooth to be treated gently. Unless you're Ingrid, in which case you mash it with salt until it begs for forgiveness. That night, after stew, soft bread only, no crusts. You sit by the fire and stare into the flame. The pouch rests on your thigh, heavy with tools and tiny jars and bits of soot. It's strange how much care goes into something so small, how much ritual, how much knowledge passed down, not through scrolls, but through whispers and habit. You think of your uncle's joke, a man without teeth is a man who will never smile at Valhalla's feast. It used to make you laugh, now it makes you brush. You pull out the clove twine Ingrid gave you and suck on it gently. The bitterness seeps into your tongue. You wince, then smile. Another day, another mouth conquered. The fire is down to red-orange embers, and most of the longhouse lies in silence, save for the occasional shuffle of a restless sleeper and the whistle of wind through the thatch roof. But you're awake, sort of, cradling a feather and watching. A small Viking miracle unfold across the room. Bjorn, the youngest in your clan, has finally lost his first baby tooth. His mother holds the tiny thing up like it's a pearl stolen from a Saxon bishop's robe. Bjorn, wide-eyed, is biting into a soft strip of leather to keep from squealing. You sit up a little straighter, curiosity pushing away sleep. Tooth loss is an event, not a nuisance. And tonight, the family's breaking out the silver, a teething. Amulet is brought forward. It's been in their family for generations. A smooth bit of deer antler carved with swirling runes, tied with a strip of wool dyed red with madder root. It smells faintly of old sweat and lavender. Sacred things always smell strange. His mother ties the amulet gently around his neck and whispers a chant you remember from your own toothless days. Something about strength, growth, and not chewing on river rocks, which might be literal advice or symbolic, depending on the speaker. Historians still argue whether these amulets were strictly medicinal or if they served as protection from spirits, believed to attack during vulnerable moments like teething. What's clear is they weren't rare. Children's graves across Viking territory often include similar talismans: bone beads, small runes, sometimes even tiny iron charms shaped like teeth. Protection, perhaps. Maybe even a promise that the next set would come in stronger. You remember your own. It was a bare tooth, too big for your neck and always bumping against your collarbone. You hated it. You also never had a bad fever during teething, and your adult teeth came in straight as ship planks. Coincidence? You'd rather not risk the God's opinion. Bjorn is quiet now, clutching his charm. His mother dips a cloth in salted water and wipes his gums gently. You see the small red spot where the tooth once stood. It's oddly nostalgic. Like watching someone else's memory happen in real time. Tooth rituals among children are softer, more sentimental. Adults may wrap charms in symbolism and ash, but with kids it's raw magic and hopeful whispers. There's less embarrassment, more belief. A small pouch of powdered seashell is brought out, white as fresh snow. Bjorn dabs a bit on his finger and touches it to the hole in his gum. Supposed to bless the new tooth as it comes in. Supposed to keep it from turning. Black like old Leif's. You nod along, you've done it. You turned out fine. Later, when Bjorn is asleep, his mother tucks the tiny tooth into a hollowed-out bead, strings it, and hangs it near the hearth. It will stay there until the new tooth grows in. A marker of transition, a ward, or maybe just a decoration with a backstory no one will question. You think back to other children you've seen. A girl in another village who wore a necklace strung with all her baby teeth, polished and spaced like pearls. Or a boy who carried a carved tusk, with holes drilled for each tooth lost. He said when it filled, he'd be grown enough to wield a spear. There's a kind of joy in it, an openness. Adult dental care is meticulous, even anxious. But kids treat it like magic. Tooth falls out, a charm appears, gums hurt, someone sings to them. They don't brush yet, not properly, but they chew on herbs and feathers and absorb. The rituals through imitation. In fact, as you lean back, you recall a moment from your own childhood. You were maybe 6, your first tooth barely hanging by a thread. You refused to pull it, so your cousin tied it to a goose feather and dared you to sneeze. It worked. Sort of. You bled for a while. But you never forgot the feeling of pride after, holding that tiny white fragment in your palm like it was a trophy. The clan values teeth. Maybe not in the polished, orthodontic way of future centuries, but as markers of vitality, readiness, and health. Missing teeth in elders are signs of battle or long life. Missing teeth in children are celebrated like the first step or first hunt. And in between, you clean, you guard, you charm. Tonight, as you settle back down, you see Bjorn shift under his blanket, fingers curled around his necklace. He's safe. The amulet watches over him. The tooth is gone, but the story is beginning. You wrap your own blanket tighter and run your tongue along your upper row. Still firm, still whole, and tomorrow, you'll brush for both of you. The mead hall glows like a smoldering lantern against the frost-crusted dark, and inside, the scent of roasted lamb, warm beer, and too many unwashed warriors blends into a bouquet that you might call Viking Musk Evening Edition. You duck through the heavy wool curtain, your pouch tapping your hip, your tongue already coated in anticipation and potential regret. It's social hour. Benches groan beneath men with thick arms and thicker laughter. You spot Leif already deep in conversation, one foot up on a stool, gesturing wildly with a drinking horn in hand. His teeth, you note with some horror, still have what appears to be a chunk of smoked eel from dinner. You nudge him as you slide. Into place beside him, discreetly flicking your thumb at his mouth. "Do I have something?" He starts. Yes, and it's alive. He swipes at his teeth with the back of his hand. Unacceptable. You pull your spare feather from your pouch and offer it to him. He looks around sheepishly, then ducks his head and uses it beneath the table like a child sneaking sweets. Tooth etiquette is real, even here. Even now, you listen as the conversation shifts from raids to rations to unexpectedly molars. Lost 2 in one blow. someone brags, mouth wide open, showcasing a conspicuously bare upper gum. Shield splintered, caught me right here. You, wince. He seems proud. Better than that stale barley cake last month, another chimes in. That took out my incisor, should have worn a helmet to dinner. Laughter erupts. Someone clinks horns. Viking mead hall discussions are not always glamorous. They range from politics to poetry to tooth loss with alarming speed. Tonight, the theme seems to be oral war stories. You sip from your own horn, light mead, still fizzy, with a hint of honey and moss. As the warmth spreads down your throat, you're struck again by how crucial it is to maintain your teeth, not just for eating, but for speaking, boasting, and surviving social ridicule. You're grateful in this moment for your goose feather and your devotion to nightly brushing. The man beside you belches loud enough to make a torch flicker. His breath smells like fermented regret. Historians still argue whether Viking dental hygiene was considered a personal virtue or a social expectation. But stories like these, passed down, exaggerated, and laughed over, suggest that losing teeth wasn't just a medical issue. It was a narrative one. People remembered how you lost them, how you handled it. Whether you whistled after or got mocked mercilessly by children, a man down the table claims to have lost a tooth biting into frozen reindeer meat. Didn't even flinch, he adds. Kept chewing. I once found a molar in my boot. Someone else mutters. Didn't even know it was gone. You lean in to hear better. This is folklore in the making. A bard near the fire takes up a lyre and strums a tune about a warrior named Styrbjörn who had all his teeth knocked out in battle, then whittled new ones from walrus tusk and charmed a Valkyrie into marrying him. The hall loves it. It's absurd. It's perfect. You smile politely, still swirling your mead. You feel your tongue tap the back of each tooth, still intact, still rooted. You take pride in that. Someone across the fire grins at you with an almost comically black molar and says, "You've got all yours, don't you?" You nod. Must be nice. It is. You tell your own story about the time you bit into smoked hazelnuts too soon and almost cracked a premolar. You exaggerate the swelling, the wobble, the dramatic moment when you sat by the fjord and prayed to Friar for dental mercy. You leave out the part where it turned out to be just a bit of stuck resin. The story's better without the anticlimax. As the fire burns low and the stories soften, you notice several men quietly ducking out, heading toward the communal wash basins or pulling small pouches from their belts. You see feathers, cloths, even one polished fishbone wrapped in velvet. It's brushing time, mead hall style. You join them, settling by the edge of the room, lighting a scrap of pine pitch for light. You dip your feather into your paste, soot, chalk, and a new pinch of dried thyme you'd saved just for tonight. A party blend, if you will. The feather slides between your teeth. You work slowly, rhythmically, while men laugh and hum around you. There's something comforting about the shared quiet of cleaning. No orders, no fighting. Just soft scraping, occasional spitting, and the scent of mint and tar and soot swirling like incense. You finish, rinse with a sip of water from your flask, and tuck the feather away. Leaf sits beside you, using your spare still, cheeks puffed out like a frog. You pat his shoulder. He grins with foamy lips. You pretend not to see it. Later, when the mead runs low and the hall dims to coals, you lie back on a bench, arms folded, head tilted, and smile quietly. You still have all your teeth. You made it through another mead hall feast without losing a molar to stew. That's what you call a victory. The morning sun finds you sprawled half sideways on a bench, a light dusting of ash on your cheek, and your pouch of Toothcare supplies tucked beneath your elbow like a cherished baby goat. Your jaw aches faintly, not from injury, but from all the mead-fueled storytelling. Too much laughing, too much chewing, and at one point, an ill-advised demonstration of your barley-crushing bite strength, involving a stale loaf and peer pressure. As you rub sleep from your eyes and stretch the soreness from your shoulders, you hear someone muttering prayers by the hearth. It's your uncle, again. He's kneeling, murmuring to a stone slab set upright near the fire, one he carved years ago with odd little symbols. Swirls, teeth-like notches, spirals that look vaguely like molars. To the untrained eye, it might just be decorative. But you know better. This, as the family legend goes, is a toothstone. He claims it blesses dental health, protects warriors from jaw wounds, ensures clean bites in battle, and smooth kisses at harvest feasts. You're not sure it does any of that, but it's hard to argue with a man who can open walnuts with his front teeth and once whittled a wolf's fang into a decorative comb. You walk over, rubbing your chin. What does that symbol mean again? You ask, pointing at a tooth-shaped carving with a slash through it. Means I lost that one, your uncle says, proudly. But look at the others, still here. You blink. The stone is a kind of dental journal. Each notch a tooth, each mark a memory. Historians still argue whether such carvings were common or symbolic. Some believe they were part of a private spiritual practice. Others think they were early dental records, primitive but personal. Either way, your uncle treats his like a shrine, and you can't help but be a little impressed. He offers you a bone-handled chisel and nods to the blank edge of the slab. Want to start yours? You hesitate. Your teeth are all still there, but the idea of documenting their survival feels right. You take the chisel and carve a single cautious line. A blank tooth, no losses. Yet. Later that day, you spot similar carvings on the edge of a wooden shield. 8 tiny grooves evenly spaced with one X'd out. The warrior who owns it notices your glance and grins. First molar, he says, tapping the axe. Beer barrel mishap. You nod solemnly. Tragic. Carvings aren't limited to stones or shields. You've seen them etched into combs, amulets, even the handles of eating knives, tooth symbols as personal markers, a kind of dental boasting. Look what I still have, they seem to say. Or perhaps, look what I've survived. Your neighbor, a young woman named Asa, shows you a silver clasp she wears on her belt. At first glance, it's a knot pattern, but on closer inspection, yep, tiny stylized teeth, fanged and proud. For strength, she says, and to remind me not to bite. The wrong berries. You laugh. You think of all the Viking symbols carved into ships and buildings, runes for luck, protection, weather. Maybe there's a missing chapter. Maybe somewhere out there is a boat with a molar carved into its prow, warding off bad stew and jaw cramps. That night, you find yourself sitting by the hearth again, feather in hand, and glance toward the stone. It gleams faintly in the firelight. The newest mark, yours, barely visible, but there. A beginning. You clean your teeth slowly, reverently, as if the act itself is now connected to something larger. Not just health, not just routine, but identity. You are the keeper of your own molars, the guardian of your enamel, the carver of your record. You consider adding more symbols, maybe a dot for every time you resisted chewing ice, a dash for every successful scrape with the feather, a spiral for when you avoided Ingrid's clove vinegar rinse. You're getting carried away. But also, not really. Teeth matter, not just for eating or speaking, but for remembering. That night, as you roll into your furs, you feel the cool weight of the chisel still in your pouch, nestled next to your feather and cloth and berry powder. You'll return it tomorrow. Maybe. The sky overhead is bruised with morning, all blue-gray and peach-tinted clouds stretched like lazy sailcloth across the fjord. Today, you're headed out. Not far, just a little river scouting trip, but it's enough of a journey to require gear, planning, and most importantly, travel hygiene. You check your pouch again, running through the now familiar list. Feather, paste, cloth, tiny flask of mint water, emergency birch sprig. Good. You swing your leg over the longboat's side, with a grunt settling into your oar slot. Around you, others do the same. Boots thudding on planks, gear jostling, someone already muttering about having forgotten their dry socks. Priorities, people. You smirk, knowing you didn't forget the important stuff. The longboat pushes off, with a creak and a shout, slicing into the river like a knife through cream porridge. And though your role here is rowing, scouting, maybe bartering if it comes to it, one eye is always on the horizon, and the other on your molars. Travel means improvising. No cozy hearth, no fire-warmed water. Just wind, wood, and the hope your pouch didn't pick up goose droppings when you set it down. As the oars move in rhythm, you start your mid-morning ritual. Not full brushing, there's a time and a place, but a quick chew and rinse to keep. Your mouth sharp. You pull out a sliver of dried birchwood, flattened and curled at the tip from use, and begin to gnaw gently. Historians still debate how often Vikings maintained their hygiene while traveling. Some argue grooming paused entirely during raids. Others point to finds of grooming kits tucked inside travel satchels and suggest that even mid-journey, a proper Viking still combed, scraped, and polished. You? Your team clean on the move. The birch has that familiar taste. Peppery, slightly sweet, and just bitter enough to convince you it's working. Your gums tingle. You turn the stick, chewing both sides, then use it to nudge away something sticky from your back tooth. Success. Beside you, Leaf watches, amused. Brushing on the river now? You shrug. Battle breath is a liability. He chuckles and pulls a sprig of pine needles from his belt. You chew, I swish. Together, you pass the time, rowing, grooming, scanning the shore for signs of settlement. Your boatmates range from indifferent to appreciative. No one mocks your dental diligence outright, not anymore. A few even ask to borrow your water flask, though you politely decline. There are limits. By midday, you've stopped near a small rocky outcropping to eat. Dried fish, barley bread, some pickled root. You chew slowly, always mindful of hidden bones. Travel food is dangerous for teeth. More than one Viking has cracked a premolar on salted elk jerky. Afterward, you retreat behind a boulder for a proper cleaning. Feather dipped in mint water. Small dollop of paste. Soft, practiced strokes. There's no mirror, of course, just instinct and touch. You've brushed so many times now that you could find a crumb between your molars in total darkness. Some call it obsession. You call it readiness. You rinse with a splash of mint water, spit discreetly into the grass, and dry the feather against your tunic. You feel better. Sharper. Like your brain works better when your mouth doesn't taste like fish scales and vinegar. You tuck the kit away, pat your pouch for good luck, and rejoin the others. By nightfall, the longboat drifts to shore. The crew setting up a quick camp beneath a stand of trees. No fires tonight. Too close to a known trade route, and you don't want to advertise your presence. Still, you find time. As your comrades mumble themselves to sleep, you crouch beside a flat stone and light a pine splinter to use as a candle. You pull out your cloth, your feather, and begin your end-of-day cleaning. Carefully, silently, reverently. One warrior nearby watches, eyes half-lidded. You do this every day? Twice, you whisper. He nods. Maybe that's why your laugh doesn't scare horses. You smile in the dark. Traveling doesn't mean neglect. It means adapting. No rinsing bowl, use mint water. No cozy fire, light a pine sliver. No privacy, brush anyway. You finish the ritual, coil your cloth, and slip everything back into your pouch. It sits beside you as you lie down, curled into your cloak, breath warm, teeth smooth, smile secret. Tomorrow you might trade, or fight, or run, but tonight you rest clean. The scream comes just after sunrise, sharp and sudden, cutting through the mist like a bone knife through hide. You bolt upright, hand on your pouch before your blade, because let's be honest, if something's wrong, your teeth still matter, you. Scramble to your feet and find Leaf kneeling beside one of the younger crew, a broad-shouldered lad named Arnie. who's clutching his face with both hands and making the unmistakable noises of someone whose mouth has betrayed him. Leaf gives you a grim nod. Took a blow to the jaw, probably cracked a tooth. You sigh. Not because you're annoyed, but because this means it's time for Viking first aid. Oral edition. You crouch beside Arnie and gently coax his hands away. His face is flushed, jaw swollen on the left side, and there's already a smear of blood at the corner of his mouth. He winces as you touch just below his cheekbone. Bit down mid-spar, someone explains. Got clipped by a swinging shield. You nod, already unpacking your pouch. This is the moment you've trained for. Not officially, of course, no one appointed you camp dentist, but years of ritual brushing, feather maintenance, and birch chewing have given you a strange credibility. People trust you with molars. You start with a rinse. Warm water mixed with salt and pine sap, poured slowly from your flask into Arnie's mouth. He gargles, winces, and spits out a mouthful of pink. Not ideal, but manageable. Next, you unwrap. Your emergency balm, a thick, dark salve of rendered fat, beeswax, crushed clove, and a pinch of dried algae. Sounds disgusting. Smells worse. But it numbs the gums better than snow and won't rot his face off. Probably. Historians still argue whether Vikings had dedicated dental healers or if Toothcare was just folded into general medicine. Evidence suggests the latter. Most healing. Kits include herbal salves, bone drills, yes drills, and even tiny hammers, used presumably to knock out problem teeth like they were misbehaving nails. You opt for balm, not hammer. As Arnie groans and rocks, you gently rub the mixture onto the swelling with a folded bit of wool. He winces again, then sighs. It's working, he mutters, mouth thick and slow. You resist the urge to say, told you so. The next step is stabilization. You dig out a soft strap of leather and roll it gently, instructing him to bite down, lightly. Just enough to keep his jaw from tightening too much. He nods, still breathing hard. Nearby, the rest of the crew watches, with a mix of sympathy and queasy fascination. You catch a whisper. Should have brushed more, someone says. You don't correct them, even though trauma, not tartar, is the culprit. You'll take the unearned validation. Once Arnie is settled, propped on a bedroll and muttering about mead-soaked revenge, you sit back and breathe. Your own teeth ache in sympathy. You run your tongue along your bottom row, still intact. This could have been you. You remember a raid last year, chaos in a storm, a broken oar, a headbutt you didn't see coming. The resulting chip in your upper left canine made you whistle through S sounds for a week. You've kept the little shard in your pouch ever since, tied in a scrap of cloth as a weird memento. You believe in respecting your teeth, especially when they remind you how fragile they really are. You glance at Arnie. He's sleeping now, gently drooling into a moss pad. His jaw is already bruising. You tuck a mint sprig near his head. It won't heal anything, but when he wakes, it'll help with the taste of dried blood and regret. Later, around the fire, you hear murmurs of other dental disasters. Men talking in hushed tones about teeth lost mid-raid, molars cracked during famine winters, and one poor soul who took an arrow to the face and somehow survived, minus 3 incisors and half his sense of taste. You nod solemnly through each tale. Everyone has a tooth story. Yours, thankfully, remains mostly intact. You clean your feather that evening with special care, boiling it briefly in a tiny pot of water over the coals, then drying it against your sleeve. You mix a fresh paste, bit more chalk today to offset last night's sweet mead, and give your mouth the thorough treatment. The scrape is soothing, the rinse bracing, the final swish of pine water invigorating. You sleep with your pouch beside. Your head, just in case, and you dream of battles won without broken teeth. The trade post smells like wet wood, fried fish, and desperation, but you're here for the good stuff. Not cloth, not iron nails, not even honey cakes. though you eye those too. No, today you're searching for something rare, something pungent, something medicinal. You're looking for dental supplies. The post is crowded. Traders shout, goats bleat, a dog sneezes near a sack of grain. You wade through it all with your pouch, tucked safely beneath your tunic, scanning stalls with the precision of a man who knows exactly what he's hunting. There it is, a stall wedged between a furrier and a man selling allegedly blessed eel skins. You stop. The merchant behind it is small, hunched, and dressed like he hasn't met a clean rag in a decade, but his teeth, oddly enough, gleam. Suspicious. You pretend to browse. Bundles of dried herbs, tiny bottles sealed with wax, rolls of cloth, and, yes, a neat little row of pouches marked with strange symbols. He notices your gaze and grins. Looking for healing? He rasps. Or just trying not to smell like bear breath? Both, you reply honestly. He gestures to a pile of narrow leather pouches. Tooth blends. For pain, for cleaning, for charm. Pick one. You open one at random. It smells of clove, dried elderflower, and something slightly minty. Another has a more aggressive edge. Garlic, ash, and what might be powdered bone. You raise an eyebrow. Trade? You ask. He nods. Elk hide, or a good copper pin. You reach into your belt pouch and pull out 2 lengths of sinew and a comb carved from driftwood. He sniffs, then shrugs. Close enough. Deal. You walk away with 3 pouches, a small carved spoon for mixing, and a bone stopper filled with clove tincture. The smell alone makes your mouth water and your gums flinch. Historians still debate how organized Viking trade in dental care really was. Some believe it was incidental, herbs sold for other uses but applied to the mouth when needed. Others point to consistent finds of tooth-related items in trader camps, waxed cloths, resin bundles, even specialized cases for herbs likely used in oral applications. You believe it. You've traded for birch oil and bee propolis before. Once, you even bought what turned out to be crushed chalk wrapped in cabbage leaf. Unpleasant but effective. Back at camp, you open the new pouches like they're treasure maps. The clove blend is your favorite. You mix it into a dab of goat tallow and press it along your sore gums. The burn is immediate, but in a good way. A cleansing pain. You sit back, breathing through your nose, as your mouth numbs slightly and the clove fog rolls in. Leaf tries some too. His eyes water. It's like licking firewood. Clean firewood, you say. The merchant had also included something extra. A sliver of red cloth with a symbol stitched in black thread. A charm, he'd whispered. For luck. Or maybe digestion. Hard to say. You tuck it into your feather pouch anyway. That night, your new regimen begins. You mix a pea-sized lump of ash and mint paste from one pouch, smear it gently on your feather, and begin your nightly clean. The taste is stronger now, sharp and forested. It bites, but you're ready. The feather slides between your molars, past the clove soot residue, and into that one space where barley always hides. You catch it. Spit. Success. You rinse with warm water and a drop of the tincture. Your tongue tingles. You grin in the firelight. Even Leif looks impressed. I swear your breath just cleared my sinuses. Tell that to the Valkyries. You reply. You both laugh. As you roll up for sleep, your pouch now heavier with new blends, you feel strangely modern. You've got options now. Flavors, textures, tools of the trade. You didn't just brush today, you shopped. By now, you've grown confident in your routine. Feather angle just right. Pressure firm but not brutal. You even rinse twice if you've had particularly sticky mead. But still, sometimes, late at night, you stare at your kit and wonder, why? Goose feathers? Why not badger whiskers? Or the sharp end of a deer antler? Or heaven forbid, a pine cone? You decide it's time to find out. You visit the camp elder, a woman called Solveig the Tall. She's not actually that tall. She just wears very high leather boots and stands on stones when lecturing. But she knows things. She has seen things. She once claimed she brushed her teeth with seal bone and a whisper of thunder. You're still not sure what that means. You sit beside her fire as she stirs a pot of something that smells like regret and moss. You ask her directly, "Why?" "Goose feathers?" She grunts. Then, with surprising grace, she reaches into a bundle by her side and pulls out a handful of feathers. Crow, duck, raven, goose, even a swan quill. She lays them out like weapons. One by one she points. Crow, too thin. Snaps. Snap, duck, too soft, gums it, squish. Raven, elegant but cursed. Ominous pause. Goose, she says, lifting the familiar plume, is balance. She bends it gently, runs her finger along the shaft. Flexible, just stiff enough. Doesn't shred, doesn't split too quick. The perfect in-betweener. She hands it to you like a sacred object. You nod solemnly. Historians still debate whether goose feathers were exclusively used for dental care. Many were used for writing, fletching arrows, and tickling unfortunate cousins. But in dig sites across Norse lands, feathers have been found stained with ash and resin, tucked into pouches alongside combs and toothpicks. It's likely the dental use was practical, a tool soft enough not to hurt, but strong enough to scrape. Feather shafts can be whittled to various widths, customized like toothbrushes of the future. Some had carved handles. Others were simply plucked and tucked away. Solveig goes on to describe her youth, brushing with swan feathers, far too large. She admits, like scrubbing your teeth with a broom. She laughs, coughs, and returns to her stew. You thank her and head out, the goose feather tucked behind your ear like a badge of honor. Back at your fire, you examine your current brush, modest, slightly curved, still in good shape. You test its bend, still springy. You decide to experiment. You pull out a duck feather from your emergency pouch. You try it. It flops. You try again. It bends like a noodle. Useless. You toss it into the fire, where it burns like shame. Later, Leaf asks what you're doing. You explain. He nods thoughtfully. I tried a fish spine once. Why? You ask, horrified. Looked pointy. And I couldn't taste food for 2 days. You write that down, for science. There's a certain romance to the goose feather. It's not flashy. It's not rare. But it's dependable. It doesn't try to impress. It just works. You realize for the first time that maybe this is the Viking equivalent of brand loyalty. You've chosen your feather. You're not switching to porcupine quills anytime soon. You clean your teeth before bed with newfound reverence. You angle the feather just so, apply the paste in delicate dabs, and scrape gently, respectfully, as if the goose itself might be watching. You rinse with pine tea. You smile into the firelight. Feather, you think you are my friend. And as you lie down, pouch tucked against your chest, you dream of a land where all toothbrushes are perfect and no one uses fish bones again. You awaken to the scent of damp earth and the distant murmur of the river. As you stretch beneath your woolen blanket, your hand instinctively reaches for the small pouch nestled beside you, a humble collection of tools that have become as essential as your sword or shield. Inside, your trusted goose feather lies alongside a fragment of birch twig, a pinch of salt, and a sliver of beeswax. Each item tells a story, not just of personal hygiene, but of a culture that valued cleanliness in ways often overlooked. The goose feather, with its perfect balance of flexibility and strength, has proven to be an ideal tool for gently scraping away the remnants of last night's feast. Its natural curve allows you to reach the crevices between your teeth, ensuring no morsel is left to fester. Beside it, The birch twig serves a dual purpose. Chewing on its end frays the fibers, creating a makeshift brush that, when combined with a dash of salt, offers a refreshing cleanse. The salt, coarse and unrefined, acts as a natural abrasive, scrubbing away plaque and leaving your mouth tingling with a sense of purity. The beeswax, though primarily used for sealing wounds or waterproofing gear, occasionally finds its way into your dental routine. A thin layer applied to a sensitive tooth can provide temporary relief, a testament to the resourcefulness ingrained in your people. As you sit by the fire, methodically tending to your oral care, you recall tales of warriors who, before battle, would ensure their appearance was immaculate, not out of vanity, but as a sign of respect for themselves and their ancestors. Clean teeth, well-groomed hair, and polished armor were seen as reflections of one's inner discipline and honor. Historians still debate the extent of dental practices among the Norse. Some argue that the presence of toothpicks and evidence of tooth filing in archaeological finds indicates a rudimentary understanding of oral hygiene. Others believe these practices were more symbolic, perhaps tied to rituals or status symbols. Regardless, your daily ritual connects you to a lineage that understood the importance of self-care, even in the harshest of environments. It's a quiet act of defiance against decay and disorder, a moment of control in an unpredictable world. Leif, ever curious, watches your routine with a mix of amusement and intrigue. You and that feather, he chuckles, more inseparable than a warrior and his axe. You grin, revealing teeth that, while not flawless, are a testament to your diligence. An axe may win battles, but a clean mouth wins hearts. He laughs, conceding the point, and retrieves his own makeshift tools, inspired to join in the morning ritual. As the sun climbs higher, casting golden hues across the camp, you feel a sense of readiness, not just in body, but in spirit. The simple act of caring for your teeth has become a cornerstone of your identity, a daily affirmation of who you are and the values you uphold. And as you prepare to face whatever challenges the day may bring, you do so with the confidence that comes from knowing you've honored yourself in the most fundamental way. Section 16. The wind bites today, not like a full howl, just little nips, cold teeth at your ears and nose, the kind that make your jaw clench without realizing it, which is exactly what's happening now. You've been trudging through snow-stitched marsh for hours on a scouting run, and your jaw locked tighter than a trader's coin purse, and that's when it hits you. Your molars hurt. You stop mid-step. It's not agony, yet. Just that dull, bone-deep ache that says, hello, I might be turning into something terrible. You swallow and it throbs. You rub your cheek. Leif notices and raises a brow. Cold jaw? He asks, casually twirling a twig in his fingers. You nod. Might be more. He frowns. Not again. You find a half-sheltered spot beneath a pine. Kneel down and pull out your kit. The goose feather's fine, but this isn't about cleaning. This is triage. Emergency mode. Your version of battlefield dentistry. You unwrap your pain kit, a tiny waxed cloth holding the darkest, most pungent concoction you own. Dried garlic, black salt, pine pitch, and crushed fennel, all rubbed together into a tar-like smear. You wipe. Tear a bit of soft linen, dip it in the mix, and wedge it gently along your gum line. Instantly, burn. Your eyes water. Leif winces, just watching. You sure it's not poison? Hope not, you mutter, already drooling. Historians still argue whether Viking-era dental pain relief leaned more on herbal remedies or brute extraction. We've found tools, yes, drills and prying irons, but also caches of herbs, resins, and waxes tucked alongside grooming items. And frankly, if given the choice between clove-stung sap and a hot iron hook, you'll take the herbal agony every time. You sit still for a few minutes, letting the painkiller brew do its work. The burning numbs to a dull hum. You breathe easier, And then, as the forest quiet returns, you begin the second stage, preventive massage. You pull a sliver of warmed beeswax from your pouch, mold it between your fingers, and press it gently against the sore area, like a barrier between your molar and the freezing wind. Leaf, to his credit, doesn't tease you. Instead, he pulls out his own feather and chews on it. Thoughtful. You know, he says, I heard once that a man soaked his teeth in seal oil and never felt pain again. That sounds slippery, you reply. He also died of lung rot. Could be unrelated. You both laugh softly. Tooth pain on the move is a menace. You can't eat well, can't shout commands properly, and any cold wind that hits just right makes your whole face feel like it's cracking. But with your pouch, your herbs, and your stubbornness, you manage. You finish with a rinse. Salt water and mint from a flask so cold it makes your hand ache. But your mouth feels okay. Not perfect, but bearable. The ache has retreated. You pack everything up again. Feather tucked safely inside the pouch like a sleeping bird. As you move forward, the ache flares again. Just a flicker, but you press on. This is the reality behind Viking grit. Not just battle scars and song-worthy glory, but also fighting back against the small daily invasions of rot, cold, and time, with feathers, herbs, and rituals, with belief, and with the quiet bravery of facing the same pain over and over and saying, not today. You catch a glimpse of your reflection in a puddle, cheeks red, eyes alert, lips tight over clenched teeth. You look fierce, you keep walking. The wind bites today. Not like a full howl, just little nips, cold teeth at your ears and nose, the kind that make your jaw clench without realizing it. Which is exactly what's happening now. You've been trudging through snow-stitched marsh for hours on a scouting run, and your jaw, locked tighter than a trader's coin purse, and that's when it hits you. Your molars hurt. You stop mid-step. It's not agony, yet. Just that dull, bone-deep ache that says, hello, I might be turning into something terrible. You swallow and it throbs. You rub your cheek. Leaf notices and raises a brow. Cold jaw? He asks, casually twirling a twig in his fingers. You nod. Might be more. He frowns. Not again. You find a half-sheltered spot beneath a pine. Kneel down and pull out your kit. The goose feather's fine, but this isn't about cleaning. This is triage, emergency mode. Your version of battlefield dentistry. You unwrap your pain kit. A tiny waxed cloth holding the darkest, most pungent concoction you own. Dried garlic, black salt, pine pitch, and crushed fennel all rubbed together into a tar-like smear. You tear a bit of soft linen, dip it in the mix, and wedge it gently along your gum line. Instantly, burn. Your eyes water. Leaf winces, just watching. You sure it's not poison? Hope not, you mutter, already drooling. Historians still argue whether Viking-era dental pain relief leaned more on herbal remedies or brute extraction. We've found tools, yes, drills and prying irons, but also caches of herbs, resins, and waxes tucked alongside grooming items. And frankly, if given the choice between clove-stung sap and a hot iron hook, you'll take the herbal agony every time. You sit still for a few minutes, letting the painkiller brew do its work. The burning numbs to a dull hum. You breathe easier. And then, as the forest quiet returns, you begin the second stage, preventive massage. You pull a sliver of warmed beeswax from your pouch, mold it between your fingers, and press it gently against the sore area, like a barrier between your molar and the freezing wind. Leaf, to his credit, doesn't tease you. Instead, he pulls out his own feather and chews on it, thoughtful. You know, he says, I heard once that a man soaked his teeth in seal oil and never felt pain again. That sounds slippery, you reply. He also died of lung rot. Could be unrelated. You both laugh softly. Tooth pain on the move is a menace. You can't eat well, can't shout commands properly, and any cold wind that hits just right makes your whole face feel like it's cracking. But with your pouch, your herbs, and your stubbornness, you manage. You finish with a rinse, salt water and mint from a flask so cold it makes your hand ache. But your mouth feels okay. Not perfect, but bearable. The ache has retreated. You pack everything up again, feather tucked safely inside the pouch like a sleeping bird. As you move forward, the ache flares again, just a flicker, but you press on. This is the reality behind Viking grit. Not just battle scars and song-worthy glory, but also fighting back against the small daily invasions of rot, cold, and time. With feathers, herbs, and rituals. With belief. And with the quiet bravery of facing the same pain over and over and saying, "Not today." You catch a glimpse of your reflection in a puddle. Cheeks red, eyes alert, lips tight over clenched teeth. You look fierce. You keep walking. Evening falls like a thick woolen blanket, and with it a hush settles over the camp. Not the deep silence of snow or the emptiness of night raids. This is the contented quiet of a group fed, warm, and temporarily unbothered. You sit near the fire, rolling a smooth stone between your palms, your thoughts strangely distant. Your jaw still hums faintly from earlier. Not pain, exactly. Just that odd sensation of, you survived that, mixed with a reminder that it could come back any time. You glance down at your pouch. Tonight, something different. You pull out your oldest feather. The first one, really, from your first serious attempt at brushing. The one with the slightly split tip and stain from that time you experimented with. Pine tar paste. You should have thrown it out. But it's a totem now, a toothbrush and a memory. You set it beside your pouch, then pull out something new. A polished sliver of whalebone sanded to a curve, fitted with notches at one end. A toothpick. Leaf gave it to you this morning, muttering something about, "You're basically a healer now. Might as well look the part." It was his brother's, he said, carved during a boring winter, smoothed by years of fidgeting, and apparently excellent for dislodging fish bones. You hold it up to the firelight. There's a faint symbol etched at the end, a kind of spiral, like a storm or a molar. Historians still argue whether Vikings regularly used toothpicks. Evidence is sketchy. Some believe bits of bone and wood found at sites were used for crafts or cooking, but others, pointing to wear marks on molars and tiny tool finds, suggest a primitive but intentional toothpick culture existed. You believe it. This tool feels made for the task. You test it gently between your back teeth. It slides cleanly, dislodging something that might have been dried leek. Success. No blood. No pain. You feel elegant. Leaf watches. You're going to end up inventing Viking dentistry, you shrug. Someone has to. You begin to work slowly, feather, paste, rinse, then the toothpick. A rhythm is forming. Something ceremonial, clean, pick, rinse, smile. You light a small piece of juniper and let it smolder, waving the smoke toward your pouch like a blessing. It's not about the smoke, of course. It's about the ritual, the pause, the sense of control. That's the heart of it, isn't it? In a world where storms wreck ships, axes split friends, and winter crushes even the proudest, here is one place, your mouth, where you still reign. Leaf joins you quietly, not saying much, just brushing. You pass him the toothpick when you're done. He raises an eyebrow. You trust me with this? Try not to swallow it. Later, as the fire dips to embers and someone starts softly humming a lullaby older than most longhouses, you tuck the toothpick back into your pouch, right beside your feather. 2 tools, 1 purpose. You press your fingers against your jaw. The soreness is gone now, not cured, just calmed. And as you lie back, staring up at a night sky littered with stars and smoky with stories, you think, tomorrow, might be chaos. You might run, fight, fall, but tonight your teeth are clean, and that strangely feels like a small kind of victory. Your boots crunch softly across the frost-kissed ground as you follow the procession uphill. It's not a raid this time, not a feast, not even a hunt. It's a burial. And in true Viking style, it's quiet. Not silent, mind you. There are murmurs, rustles, the low chant of a skald reciting lineage like a fireside story stretched over generations. But the mood is subdued, reverent. The man being laid to rest was no warlord. He was something rarer, a bone setter, a healer, and in your opinion, the best tooth puller in 5 valleys. You knew him. Barely. But you knew his work. One eye cloudy. With age, fingers always smelling faintly of garlic and pine sap. He once extracted a rotten premolar from leaf, using only a sliver of antler, 3 muttered runes, and what he claimed was a distraction goose. Leif still winces when the story comes up. As the skald speaks, you spot something peculiar among the grave goods being arranged. A leather pouch tied in a neat twist, exactly like yours. Someone opens it. Out falls a feather, a length of sinew, a stick of dark resin, and a tooth, worn but intact, strung on a bit of thread like a charm. You feel something shift in your chest. Historians still debate whether Vikings believed teeth mattered in the afterlife. Some sagas mention shining smiles in Valhalla. Others are silent on the matter. But burial sites sometimes include grooming kits, and a few, rare but real, contain actual teeth, likely once carried as talismans or mementos. You believe this. Old man knew something others didn't. As the earth is gently shoveled back over the grave, you catch one final glimpse of that tooth on the string, half buried now, soon to sleep forever. You find your hand drifting toward your own pouch, gently brushing its side as if to say, I remember. The evening fades into a kind of melancholy, the kind that makes everything feel slightly more vivid. The cold air sharper, the firelight warmer. The pain behind your right molar more insistent. Ah yes, the familiar throb. Likely a bit of barley husk lodged just out of reach. You crouch by the fire, retrieve your feather, and begin again, slowly, deliberately, as if each stroke was a prayer. You feel the scratch of husk. You shift the angle. The feather flexes, catches, releases, relief. You swirl mint water. Spit. Done. You sit back, staring into the flames, and for the first time all day, you smile without flinching. You think again of Valhalla, battle glory, golden halls, endless mead. But what about dental care? Do warriors brush in the afterlife? Is there a feather for every fallen fighter? Do Odin's wolves suffer gum disease? It's absurd, but also not. Because what is care, real, humble, daily care, if not the practice of preparing for eternity? If not telling the universe, I may not control much, but I do control this. You. Glance at Leif, who is inspecting his molars using the reflection in his shield. He shrugs. Still got 'em. You nod. For now, he grins. Till they burn me, then they'll shine in the ash. It's not poetic, but it's true. You turn back to your pouch, rewrap the feather, and slip it inside with a silent thank you. Not just to the goose, to the healer, the history, the care. Because one day, when your own grave goods are chosen, you know what should. Be there. Not a sword, not a jewel, just your pouch. And maybe, just maybe, a single stubborn tooth. You spend the next few days on light duty, not because you're weak, of course, but because Leif accidentally knocked a tree into your chest while checking its sturdiness, and your ribs still click when you sneeze. So now, instead of chopping wood or sparring, you're watching over the winter stores and the newcomers. It's a small party of traders from across the fjord, friendly enough. One of them, a wiry man with exactly 7 teeth and the world's most unsettling wink, keeps offering you dried fish wrapped in what he swears is Herb cloth for better breath. You accept one, out of politeness. And later, out of scientific curiosity, you bite into it. Mistake. Your left bicuspid feels like it's been sucker punched by a glacier. You rush to your pouch. Tooth first. Dignity later. You unwrap your emergency balm again. This time, you stir in a bit of crushed sage and snowberry, new additions since that last trip to the trade post. You press the mix into the sore spot, lean back, and try not to look like someone who's just been betrayed by lunch. Leaf strolls up and offers you a small wooden carving. For luck, he says. It's a smiling tooth, sort of, you think. Or maybe a mushroom with ambitions. You take it anyway. Later that night, you gather the young ones around the fire. They've been whispering about your feather. Again. So this time you show them, you pull the pouch slowly, unwrap it like a sacred text, show the feather, the cloth, the slivers of dried mint. They gasp. You explain. The brushing, the picking, the rinsing, the respect. They ask questions. The usual. Does it hurt? What happens if you swallow the feather? Can you carve a rune into a tooth? You answer them all, patiently. You even let one of them try a dry brush, no paste, just technique. They squeal. It tickles, you smile. That means it's working. One girl, brave and wide-eyed, says, "My father says teeth don't matter, only fists do." You nod. Fists end fights, teeth start meals. She blinks, then grins, a little tooth peeking out, just slightly crooked. You look around the circle, seeing these future raiders, farmers, singers, fishers, and for a moment, you wonder if maybe you've started something. A tradition, not of war or conquest, but of tiny rituals, daily care, a strange sort of dignity in the face of chaos. Historians still argue whether Viking children were taught grooming through stories, songs, or mimicry. You suspect it was all three. What better way to pass down knowledge than around a fire, with a bit of laughter and a dash of awe? You pack up your pouch again, slow and deliberate, like sealing a sacred box. The children watch every move. "Will I get a feather one day?" one boy asks. "Only if you earn it," you say. "And don't chew on rocks," they laugh. You nod. The next morning, you find a tiny sprig of mint placed beside your bedroll. No note, just mint. A thank you. You smile. No toothache this time. No swelling. Just the quiet certainty that someone listened, that someone cared, and that maybe, just maybe, you're not the only one guarding the flame of clean teeth in the icy dark. The sky is pale blue today, almost too clear, like the kind of blue that makes your eyes ache if you stare too long. Spring is whispering at the edges of the camp, and with it, the rivers thaw, the birds return, and your jaw finally stops aching. You sit on a rock warmed by the morning sun, pouch in your lap, gear neatly spread before you like a ritual altar. This is your final brushing of the season, at least before the next round of travel begins. You plan to make it count. Goose feather? Perfectly trimmed, paste, freshly mixed with charcoal and crushed mint. Rinse water, slightly warm, steeped with pine needle and sage. You work slowly, no rush. Each stroke is deliberate, from front to back, side to side, all the way down to that one stubborn molar that always seems to hold on to breadcrumbs like they're family heirlooms. As you clean, you hum. A quiet tune. Not a battle song, not a chant, just something soft and rhythmical, something that matches the stroke of your feather and the steady exhale of breath. Leaf walks by, sees you, nods. "You'll outlive us all." You smirk, mouth full of mint. "Not if someone steals my kit." He gestures to the kids playing nearby, one of them now proudly flaunting a small feather she tied to her braid. It's already spreading. You finish your routine. Rinse, spit discreetly behind the rock. Wrap your feather like a sacred relic and tuck it back into the pouch. And then You pause. It's time. You add something to the pouch. A carved bead. Nothing fancy, just ash wood etched with a little spiral. You made it last night by the fire. A symbol of care, of ritual, of 20 sections worth of mouth-watering, mint-flavored history. You place it beside your first feather and whisper, "For the next me." Historians will never find that bead. Or if they do, they'll debate whether it was a charm, a token, or simply a bored warrior's idle carving. Let them argue. You know what it means. You pack your things, stand tall, and walk toward the fjord, where the boats are ready, the oars lined up like ribs of a sleeping sea serpent, and you smile, because you're clean, you're prepared, and in a world of freezing wind, blood-stained mead halls, and goose-based oral hygiene, you've found your rhythm. Your pouch taps against your side like a heartbeat. It's going to be okay. Now that our long, strange journey into Viking dental care has come to a close, I want you to take a slow, deep breath. Let it in through your nose. Hold for a moment, and gently release through your mouth. The fire has burned low now. The mint has faded from your tongue, the feather rests inside its pouch, and the boats are gently bobbing at their moorings in the distance. You've traveled far, not just across icy rivers and through mossy markets, but through the small, personal rituals that once grounded an entire culture. Even in an age of axes and sagas, someone still paused to rinse with salt water. Someone chewed birch bark under the stars. Someone tucked a soft feather into their woolen pouch with just as much care as they gave their blade. And tonight, as you drift off, you carry a little piece of that quiet reverence with you. Soften your jaw. Unclench your teeth. Feel your tongue. Rest gently behind them. There's no need to chew any more birch twigs, no resin paste, no emergency balm. Just the comfort of knowing that even in the harshest corners of history, someone, somewhere, was brushing their teeth with goose feathers. And if they could find peace in that, then so can you. So let your body sink, heavy and warm. Let the rhythm of the feather brushing echo softly in your thoughts, fading gently into stillness. The fire crackles one last time. The stars blink overhead. And your breath moves in slow, steady waves. You're safe, you're clean, you're home. End of script. Sweet dreams.